On this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, myself and Justin Lowery will talk about the pending WrestleMania and many of the complications and hurdles that Vince McMahon and WWE has to deal with, plus what the future might hold over the next couple of months in professional wrestling. That's all to come on this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. And welcome back to another edition. I am Sean Meyers, joined by my co-host Justin Lowery. Justin, good to see you are happy and healthy, and that's something that truthfully no one should be taking for granted at this point, as we're coming to you Friday night just after SmackDown wrapped up, and it was a SmackDown that was taped, and it seemed as though everything was going according to plan when SmackDown was on the air, but we know that things have changed quite a bit. So I think the biggest topic in wrestling, and this is a case that every entity has had to deal with, and so many people at the beginning were saying, well, oh, it's WWE, they have to do something for the fans. We said, okay, every other sport at every level, even for individual type of sports like golf, they've pretty much all said it's not worth it. How is wrestling the exception? Well, it seems as though that's starting to catch up with Vince McMahon and WWE, the decision to try to go forward and try to continue to have their weekly television WrestleMania, because news came out earlier this week that there was going to be a big change in Orlando where they've been taping at the Performance Center in regards to the basically stay at home. This is non-essential, so they will not be able to continue to do shows going forward. They had to rush to get everything taped, including WrestleMania. So this is the first ever time that WrestleMania in its entirety will be presented as live, but we all know that will have been taped over a week in advance, and some major complications for what was supposed to happen at WrestleMania. We don't know the details. I don't want to know the details per se, but it seems like this decision to go forward with things is really unraveling, and it's going to make Vince McMahon and WWE look pretty foolish.
Yeah, I mean, the show's going to suck. Vince is get too much attention. Like you said, other sports are shut down, but no one really cares about wrestling, and that's why they're not getting blasted for doing this. Look, I guess we all know by now that Roman pulled out. Rather, it was a joint decision that they decided, since he had leukemia, his immune system, like they talked to him, they decided, or Roman was just put in the position to be like, no, I'm not doing this.
Did they not think about this 2 weeks ago?
Honestly, I haven't really been giving wrestling too much thought. I mean,
this is the issue that you and I talked about when we were last together, and
yeah.
I had Donnie Chedrick on last week, and he said, he made a good point. If one person in the company has it, he thinks everyone that steps in that ring is at high risk to get it because, okay, you run off the ropes, something like that. I understand, oh, they're taking precautions. They're giving people, they're taking their temperatures when they walk in. That's in no way sufficient to determine this. So to me, this was an inevitability all along that there was going to be major risks, and someone, and I think it's safe to say probably someone in the company now does have coronavirus, whether they've publicly said it or not. We see a lot of people being held out. It just seemed like this was going to happen from the start.
There's a high probability, right? Especially with flying in wrestlers. I read a story.
Many of them live in that area, but not all
right,
of them.
But not all of them, right? Like the story I read today is it started with I guess The Miz showed up for his WrestleMania match, and he showed up sick, and that's what. And I guess the Usos apparently got upset that they were supposed to wrestle The Miz, and The Miz showed up sick, and then that's what got Roman, alert. It's like, what am I doing? Like, why am I putting my health at risk? He's had leukemia twice. As recently as last year. And I mean, yes, he would be putting himself at great risk for what? An empty Performance Center match with Goldberg? It sure as hell ain't worth it. And I mean, Roman's in the position.
Mind, he's already cut promos about this match. And I believe, if I'm correct, he and Goldberg sort of did like a face-to-face.
Yes. And what I don't understand is, like, my question is for him would be, why now? Is it because apparently The Miz showed up sick? Because I mean, this has gone on for weeks now. This isn't new. Like all of a sudden, this sprung up on him. I mean,
I agree, but I think every day the people who maybe were cynical or skeptical at first, they're becoming more and more, I think, seeing like there is legitimacy to this. And the fact is, states, cities, counties, whatever, are all changing. I believe just today, actually, your county changed into a stay-at-home county. And that's a week after that had been decreed for my county, and we border each other. So things are changing. So it's not like everything was the exact same 2 weeks ago as it is now. Things seem to be getting more severe, and I think we went over 100,000 cases in America earlier today. But I agree, like they should have, Vince McMahon and the company should have said, we're not going to put anyone at risk 2 weeks ago. I understand that first show in the at the PC when they had SmackDown. After that, they should have never run another show. I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt for that first one because it was still in that time frame where people were doing stuff. But once they saw how awkward and uncomfortable it was, and then saw how things got a lot worse the next week, it just seems so dumb.
Vince ain't gonna job out the coronavirus, man. Apparently, everything I read, everybody did not want to hold WrestleMania. Only one man did, and that was Vince. And quite honestly, his opinion's the only one that matters.
They're now in a really tough situation because they've taped WrestleMania. The matches, they've already been completed because they can't do anything as of, yesterday afternoon, sometime like that.
Something like that. I'm not exactly sure.
I heard they also taped the Raw and SmackDown for the following week as well. So they're good through like the second week of April, and then who knows, maybe this, stay-at-home restriction will be lifted by then. If not, they'll probably just go to the library. But at some point, it seems like they're going to have to pause the storylines, right? Whether it's 2 weeks from now or a month from now or something, there's probably going to be a pause.
More and more people aren't going out and they are staying home, but that hasn't also reflected in the ratings. I mean, I think this past Raw was one of the lowest ones ever, just above 2 million. So, I mean, granted, the product isn't very good right now, but it's not like people are tuning in anyway to watch it because they're at home. I mean, clearly other people are doing other things. So, I mean, you could pause everything, honestly, because I don't think that many people are paying attention. I mean,
so that's what they should have done a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we will hold WrestleMania when we're able to, and we'll sort of just pick up from there. And if they still wanted to do, I mean, mostly, you'll go with the vintage footage each week because they have to have something on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. They have such a great library, and I think a lot of fans would actually enjoy watching some vintage stuff over the current product. But if you want to maybe have like a wrestler record a promo at home, just so that you keep those guys in mind, but they shouldn't be interacting with one another. They shouldn't have to come to the Performance Center to do it. But I think you basically pause the storylines, and then when everything gets back to normal, and I know Vince, his concern was, well, that might be months and months down the road, but that's the uncertainty every sport's facing. Then you pick things up sort of where they left off as best you can, and then you do the WrestleMania. Now they're going to have WrestleMania that's not going to be anywhere close to what anyone envisioned. They've already advertised matches that won't take place. So it just seems like it's way worse that they made the decision to do this than if they had just made the decision to postpone everything, in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely... I mean, this was never going to end well. Let's be honest. I mean, it's bad. It's going to suck. I mean... I don't know what he really thought was going to happen. And here's the thing. It wasn't like the product was on fire. He could have used this time to like halt everything, maybe give a hard reset, take this time to plan out, think, change things up a little bit. And, you basically were just giving a free off season, unfortunately.
Right. Which again, he took that route with the XFL. So why couldn't he do it with WWE?
Because the XFL is probably losing money. He's making money doing this. I mean, and it's all like, I think pretty sure Fox and USA will understand. Like you said, you could air old episodes of Raw from the 90s, SmackDown from like the early 2000s.
I would just do best ofs. Like, okay, here's our best matches of 2019.
Yeah, and they could put that together in their studios, right now.
Remember how they had the Austin, they brought Austin out for that darn Monday Night Raw on 316. Do it basically 3 hours of the best of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
Right?
Right. I mean, you could show a documentary that they have on the network, instead of a show. I mean,
and that's one way to get some people to subscribe to the network.
Right. There's absolutely things that they could do. Show things that are on the network and put it on the air, like the NXT show that shows a lot of wrestlers, in NXT. So you're kind of showing off NXT and the people that have graduated from there. I mean, there's absolutely different things you could do to
and that's one of their advantages over AEW. AEW doesn't have anything to lean back on in terms of
no, they don't have a tape library to show. Like if they're not running a live show, they're in hot water. I mean, they're screwed. But WWE got decades of footage that they can use if they really, really wanted to.
So let's talk about AEW because I'm not trying to put blame on them by any means. But I do think what AEW did forced WWE's hand, and it's hurting WWE. We'll see what happens with AEW because we don't know. Your understanding is they are still at this time able to continue with their shows.
I believe so. I did read, I think, in one article where they actually taped some stuff. So, I guess maybe even if they can't go live, they do have some stuff taped for at least a couple weeks, just in case.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
and WWE has that now. It's
right.
They got that out of the way. So what AEW did in their first show, and keep in mind there was a SmackDown at the PC. There was then that 316 Raw that I just alluded to, and then head to head that Wednesday it was AEW and NXT. And I think NXT did not have any live matches. Correct.
Correct.
AEW did basically a normal show, just minus the fans. Same amount of wrestling. They still did the promos. And there was, I thought, a lot of things that probably came off as kind of risky in terms of okay, is this really good to have people doing this? But you could say that about WWE as well. But I think because that show was so good for AEW and the fans online watching it had a great reaction, it sort of forced WWE to say, okay, we're going to have real shows too, not just one match like they had on that 316 Raw, not just showing an hour of an elimination chamber match and filling the rest with promos. We have to get back to having regular 2 or 3 hour filled with content of matches and things like that. And as a result, now WWE's in the boat where it does seem like a lot of people are sick. So your take on how AEW should continue to present, and did WWE make a mistake sort of trying to match what AEW is doing? Because Vince can't just take a back seat ever.
Hey, kudos to AEW. They got one over on WWE. They did their show, and I mean, I guess to their credit, they had 2 shows to look at WWE and see what they didn't do well. I mean, they had a time to sit back and they nailed it. I mean, that show 2 Wednesdays ago was actually pretty damn good.
And they had a lot of the wrestlers not being used sort of service.
Right, they're kind of making noises. I mean, it was actually really good. And there was also storylines being told with them on the outside. And then lo and behold, the following week, what does WWE do? They take their camera angle because, showing the entrance rep was way better. I'm like, oh, look, Vince learned something from him. I mean, he probably saw that, got the feedback and went, oh, crap. Everyone says how great this was. But
it seemed like WWE was trending in the minimizing in-ring competition aspect before that happened.
Well, probably. And then, now that you're like, okay, you got to pressure wrestlers that fly out. They're the WWE though. They don't have to. It's funny. We don't do anything. We are the WWE. Blah 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 blah. Well, AEW does something, you immediately take from them. And
right. It was pretty obvious that from the Raw the one week to the SmackDown, a lot had changed.
Yes. I mean, yes, it was a dangerous. Sure, what AEW is doing, is it dangerous? Yes. It's
which
risky.
Blows my mind that this is continuing to happen.
That's professional wrestling for you, though. That's what it does. I mean, a lot of these guys probably feel like they can't say no. I mean, Roman's in a position where he could probably tell Vince, screw you, I'm not doing it. Tough. And he's probably not in fear of losing his spot. As soon as things return to normal, he'll probably, enter the title picture at SummerSlam, hopefully, and then he'll, win the title. I mean, they're in a tough spot. They should have just canceled it and maybe made SummerSlam like in June or July, and WrestleMania. Even if it's not in an 80,000 seat stadium, even if it's in a regular arena that seats 20,000 people.
And keep in mind, they're going to have to refund 70,000 people, myself included, and they're not going to get any of that money back.
No, they got to refund everybody. You would think they would. I guess like the Hall of Fame, you could probably make SummerSlam weekend.
But you'll have to refund all the tickets you sold and then sell them again, which they probably will.
Okay, but like that's an easy fix.
Takeover.
NXT Takeover. You got to refund those tickets, but you could just reschedule that Takeover somewhere down the line. At this point, I would assume, I don't know, what's the next pay-per-view after WrestleMania? Night of Champions, or I don't even know. I think that's September. I don't know. Who cares? But that's probably canceled too.
It's actually bad that we actually. I'm thinking.
I have no idea.
I know it used to be like Judgment Day, but
it used to be able to tell you every pay-per-view and
it used to be Backlash.
Okay, yeah, but I can't remember that now. I remember one time. I think Extreme Rules used to be after WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think that's in June.
Yeah, so, who knows when the next pay-per-view... At best, the next one probably is going to be June, right? At best.
Right.
Hey.
You're talking about an actual, arena with fans.
Right. For WWE. I guess Double or Nothing is Memorial Day weekend for AEW. There's probably a shot right now to have that. Too early to tell, but there's probably a shot.
A long shot, but it's not...
I would say 50-50 right now because we're about 2 months out. Right. Probably 50-50.
So here's my idea, and I understand that this is maybe a 5% chance of happening. We know they've taped all the WrestleMania matches, and it seems like for the most part, people have respected that, they're going to not leak out the results. I haven't seen any spoilers. Now I'm trying to avoid them.
Well, I don't think you're going to get any because there's nobody in there to give them. The only way you're going to get them if an employee talks to somebody and they write it up. Because honestly,
I think that's how it always happens, though.
Yeah, you do have media that on if SmackDown was airing Friday and taped on Tuesday, you had people in attendance.
How do you think the rumors are that it's going to be Braun Strowman?
So clearly an employee is talking. Somebody's leaking that information to somebody.
So here's my idea, and I know Vince isn't going to do it, but I think this would be so much better. Say we're just going to keep those matches in our archive, and a couple years from now, 5 years from now, it'll make for an awesome documentary, but we're going to reverse course and say WrestleMania is postponed. It will save the legacy of WrestleMania by not actually presenting this as WrestleMania.
If they did that too, Vince will put it off like it was his decision.
You're not losing any money because people are only watching it on the network at this point, and people aren't just going out. You're not getting a million new subscribers just to watch this half-hearted effort at WrestleMania this year. You're not losing any money.
Yeah, I'm debating. I'll probably watch it, but I don't have the urge to watch it. I'm glad it's going to be 2 nights, I guess, in a way, because who wants to sit there and watch an empty arena show from 5 to midnight?
I would rather have 1 4-hour night. They're probably going to have 2 3-hour nights, I would think, because I don't think it's going to take as long. You can't have a grandiose entrance. It's not going to be a 10-minute Undertaker entrance, right?
It can't be. Someone's still going to sing "America the Beautiful." You don't need to have the Hall of Famers come out and stand and play.
Just like what we've been watching for 3 weeks on Raw and SmackDown. It will go down if people pull up WrestleMania 36 on the WWE Network as a complete and utter failure. He will benefit from not having WrestleMania, even though the matches are taped. Just say, hey, we're throwing those in the vault, and it'll be a really cool documentary, and maybe they'll eventually release those, but no one has to know what happens. Just say, forget it. We're pausing. Our television will still be on each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with best of specials. Or like I said, if you want to do maybe a a person filming an interview in their apartment, house, whatever, something like that, but not actual. They have to say we're eventually giving in to what the rest of this world has had to do with the social distancing and stuff, and say we're going to be better off holding off and letting the fans experience WrestleMania in person and a real, actual effort to make it a WrestleMania.
I mean, I'm for it, but Vince doesn't like to lose, and I think he looks at it as he would lose if he canceled WrestleMania. He's an idiot. He's so out of touch, it's unbelievable. Vince sucks.
You're on board with this actually makes it a less significant event to have this as WrestleMania.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's an absolute joke. It's a big time joke. It's a joke for the performers. I mean, it's just awful. It's stupid. Like if I was one of the wrestlers, I would be like, I'm not flying it. Especially if you don't live in the area. Like I'm not like Fitz. I'm not coming in. I'm not getting on a plane. I'm not flying. And then I guess since they're not working, they're not getting paid. I guess because you hear wrestlers tweeting out that since they're independent contractors and there's no gates, there's no nothing like.
Yeah, I don't know how that goes because I think they still get a downside guarantee, but that's minimal compared to what they would be making.
Right, but if they've already met their downside guarantee, then they don't need to be paid anymore.
I think you still, let's say a downside guarantee is, we'll make it simple, $100,000.
Okay.
I think you still get $2,000 every week all year long.
Okay, is that okay? I mean,
that's what it would have to be, right?
Well, if you go with the Revival, both of them said they haven't been paid in a month, and they're still under contract. Braun Strowman tweeted out
the only thing I could say about the Revival, and I could be wrong about this, is they potentially can maybe withhold if you refuse to come to work type of deal.
Who says that they're refusing to come to work? They're just
they tried to quit twice, so I don't. I think that's probably a way that Vince can freeze contracts and stuff like that. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I mean, Braun came out a couple of days ago and said that he's not getting paid when he pissed off the whole internet and wrestling community by, telling indie wrestlers to F off. He didn't even want to hear them, crying.
Yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing for him to say.
Nah, he seems to get himself in a lot of heat, especially with the wrestling community, fellow wrestlers, too.
You know who doesn't? Roman Reigns. He comes across as a pretty good dude, right?
He seems to be very likable.
Fans refuse to like him.
Well, I don't know if it's like I think we've talked about it on here many times. I don't really think it's him as much as the booking and Vince. I mean, I came on here and said I'd rather have Roman. If you look at Roman, what they tried to do with Seth Rollins and how Seth Rollins buckled under the pressure of trying to be the face. He started cracking on Twitter, giving comebacks to fans. Just shut up. One thing Cena handled well was a negative reaction. Roman would handle his mixed reaction very well, too. Rollins couldn't handle it, man. He buckled. Like, that showed me, like, oh, shit, Rollins doesn't have what it takes to be the guy in the company. He could be a main event player, but he doesn't have what it takes to be the guy, like Cena did, and clearly what Roman has.
Right, which is, I think, one thing that maybe Vince sees a little bit deeper than what fans see as well, to his credit.
Well, yeah, I mean, fans I get it.
Fans want like the best worker to be there.
In a way, like Vince picks a guy, and for hell or high water, it's going to be his way or no way. Where he comes on and goes, the fans choose. I listen to the fans' brass ring, blah blah blah. Like that's a load of crap. And I think that's what people get pissed off about is Vince. We know you're BSing us. You're full of crap. And be honest, the way he has like Roman Reigns cut a promo. That's not going to help Roman get win over any fans or those 20-something-year-olds or stuff like that's horrible. And that's I think what Cena, when Cena was at his best, like the Thugonomics, people like, oh, dude, he's awesome, blah blah blah. Then he went in all to like childlike. Right. That gets old. Like adult people don't care for that.
Right. So we had mentioned a lot of the issues with the matches. It also seems like, and again, I try to avoid spoilers, but they announced tonight on SmackDown that Bray Wyatt, maybe they didn't announce it, but Bray Wyatt said he wanted a Firefly Funhouse match with Cena. They're doing a oddly named Boneyard match with AJ and The Undertaker. There is some like creativity that they could do, and it'll be like different looking for some of these matches. And I think that's one way to break up the monotony of empty arena, come in, wrestle the match, leave, next match comes in. I think they're trying to do some different things. I would think this would be cool if they did this normally. It just seems like too much of a attempt now with how it's playing out. But what do you actually expect when you watch WrestleMania?
To be utterly amazed, but probably in a negative way. Sitting there.
Do you think any of the matches are going to come across as great matches, no matter
No.
how good?
No.
I agree. I don't think
Probably
that they
not.
will.
You really need crowd participation. Yeah, I mean, probably taping it will also probably will help some of the contact, especially when wrestlers talk to one another. I mean, I'm sure everything's been pretty much planned out and rehearsed, where it wasn't pretty much on the fly. You know, you're not basing what you're doing next on the crowd reaction. It's just going to be weird and awkward and just it's like a car wreck. You got to stare at it as you drive by, but I mean, nothing good came from it. I mean, the only thing good from this is the shirt that said that I wasn't there. Like, okay, that was pretty.
So I sent that to you, dude. I was dying because like part of me thinks that that's really funny.
It is.
But like they're basically making fun of themselves at this point, right?
Yeah, but I think at least you got to. Like, that's something you got to do today, right? In today's we're like,
I said this to Donnie. Did you watch Austin when he was out?
I saw it.
He came out and he said something like to the crowd, and they did the camera of the empty seats, and I was like laughing hysterically. Like some of this stuff, like they're trying to make the best of it, but again, I just feel like it shouldn't be in this scenario. But there has been. I actually think the promos have been really good. Like, have you caught any of the promos? Like, they've been terrific.
Well, too, I think it's easier to cut a promo when there isn't a crowd there, because if you're trying to cut a face promo, there's certain lines in your promo that are meant to get a pop, right? For the crowd to go, yay, or you're trying to get that reaction from the crowd. They know they don't have to get a reaction, so they can just go out and cut one and not have to play to the crowd. So I actually think that benefits the promos.
And some people, I don't know how true this is, I could probably get somewhat of an answer on it if I wanted to, but they think that there's less micromanaging because there's not so many people there. There's not 20 writers there.
Probably, yeah.
They're probably really scaled back with their agents and stuff like that and their producers, that it's basically like, hey, here's your promo. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like that, which should be what this company's been doing all along.
No, agreed.
Future of wrestling. What are we looking at after WrestleMania? What should there be in AEW do? What will they do? And when does this have a lasting negative effect for either company?
I'm going to say no. It's hard to tell. WWE's pretty bulletproof for the most part. I mean, ratings are what they are. They suck anyway. So, I mean, I think they have.
I don't want to cut you off, but I think your point before is Vince thought this is the way when there's no other sports, there's no other, like, I don't know, whatever, live TV shows. There's still obviously things that have been filmed, but they have a lot less competition. I think he thought this was their time to shine, and it really hasn't played out like that for the most part.
No, if anything, they've taken more of a hit.
They did really well on ESPN with WrestleMania 30, ironically.
Well, it was still under 1 million, but, I mean, people tuned in. I mean, people were just tuning in for something different, something to watch. I watched a little bit of it just because I was looking for something to watch. I think AEW, for the most part, has done themselves pretty well in the short term with this. We'll see what happens in the weeks to come if they can't, tape any more matches or whatnot. Maybe they can do Being the Elite episodes and, do little quirky interviews with some of the guys on the roster. I think
they'll do a much better job with stuff like that than Vince McMahon
yes.
would.
Well, I just think they have better creative freedom. I think they got some intelligent guys over there that know how to do certain things that are a little different, where I think WWE struggles like that. Not that they don't have guys over there that can think like that, but like you said,
Maybe it's Paul Heyman. I mean, it's
right,
insane.
They're more micromanaged, and that's where there lies the problem.
Is there a point where you think that AEW actually is going to be in trouble?
Not in the short. No, I mean this would have to go on, I think, throughout the whole summer. Because they just signed that new contract with TNT for how many more years of Dynamite. Plus, I think executives will understand, like, this is I mean, it's hard to judge anybody right now based on what's going on. You do the best you can to keep the eyeballs that you have on your product. And, when the time comes and we can kind of get back to normal in society, you pedal to the metal, and that's what you got to hope for.
And everyone's hoping that it's sooner rather than later.
I'm hoping. My hope is like Memorial Day weekend, like kind of the unofficial start to summer, that we start seeing resemblance of life again. April's this week. That's all. I'm hoping by mid-April we hit a point where we can maybe flatten the curve, as they've been talking about, and maybe turning towards more positive news. And then by the time May rolls around, hopefully sports are talking about how they can maybe start thinking about getting back now, like legitly in May. And I mean, I think
things start with, closed to the public at first.
Maybe, and I'm okay with that.
And that's what, again, I think that this wrestling and the Peace Performance Center and everything, it would have been fine had they done it on the back end, not in the midst.
I would actually be very intrigued to watch a hockey game or a basketball game with no fans, especially like a hockey game, hearing the benches call their line changes and the way they talk to one another. As a big sports fan, to me, that would be intriguing and entertaining. I don't know if the athletes would really appreciate that, but hey.
I sort of agree with you, and I think that it's a lot more likely to get back in the early summer if they maybe have that approach, because it seems very hazardous to put 20,000 people all together. Even once
this gets lifted and we're kind of back to normal, I know for me, I'm still going to be a little hesitant. Like, I'm not going to jump into a big crowd right away. I'm going to want to wait and make sure, 3 weeks later, it doesn't pop up again. Like, I want to make sure.
Right. Which could be part of Vince McMahon's thinking about, we're not going to have WrestleMania even if we tried to push it to the summer. But I don't give him that much credit to even really think.
No, we all know Vince doesn't think long term, damn it.
If you are having withdrawal from wrestling in a couple of weeks, Justin, what are you going to be doing to kind of fill that void?
Well, I mean, I guess luckily
you actually are still working at this time.
I am still working.
You're not sitting around 24 hours a
day. My life since this has started, honestly, has not changed that much. No gym. That's basically it.
No baseball coaching for you or umpiring in a couple weeks.
No. My baseball coaching doesn't really start. Our season does after the school ball season. So my season's actually supposed to start May 18th. That's a possibility. Time will tell with that. But umpiring right now for me, that of course is out of the question. There's no games. My job, we're still employed, but this week, if things don't get a little better, which I don't see them they're going to be starting laying off people, so hopefully I'm not one of them, but I mean, we'll see. Luckily my wife, or you could say unluckily, she works at a hospital. So, I mean, she's definitely going to stay.
Luckily for everyone else that there's still people that are doing that to.
Yes, because let me tell you, she comes home every day and she's exhausted. It's pretty damn crazy, let me tell you. I'm pretty hopeful, that we could get back normal here, hopefully starting in a month.
I've been binge watching NXT because I had been behind, and I think
anyone who watches. Catch up. I'm all caught up on the Ruthless Aggression era. On those episodes.
I heard those are terrific. And also, what was the Chris Benoit documentary?
Oh, well, I'll get to that. Let me stick with this. The Ruthless Aggression, they are good, but they're completely Vince McMahon propaganda. I think you'll notice if you haven't watched him
I
yet.
was told that they made Vince seem like a genius for changing
Yes,
it to
like
WWE
yeah,
as
like
opposed to
there's
WWF.
right, like he's the one who decided to change that. Not no, you lost the lawsuit. Like, like he changes history. It's kind of like watching the Monday Night Wars. Like if you're a real fan, you know the real story, and he chooses you know how to rewrite history a little bit. But yeah, I watched the FCW documentary on there. That was pretty cool.
Which is the predecessor to NXT.
Right, right. So that was pretty cool. So there are some things, if you're a wrestling fan on the network, that sometimes I pretty much enjoy that stuff a lot more than the product recently. And that's why I keep the network, honestly. In regards to the Chris Benoit, the Dark Side of the Ring.
Now, this is the second season, correct?
Yes.
They did Bruiser Brody, and did they do Macho? And
yeah, I think they did Owen Hart, too. Hold on here.
Big chug of that Mountain Dew. Is that a diet?
Dry. Yeah, I watched the all of the first season. Episode 1 of season 2 aired Tuesday night. I did watch that. Did you catch it?
I did not. I'm also kind of OCD. So with this extra time, I don't know how long I'm going to have where I'm basically not doing anything, but that's lower on my list. But if I do get time, I would like to see them from the start, even though it's not really continuous. Like I could probably watch one.
Right. So
but,
you've never seen a episode yet. You didn't see anything. Okay. Wow. You missed. They're really good. Really good.
That's what I heard. And they're not Vince McMahon produced.
Oh, no. This is, this is an actual, yeah, I watched the Benoit one, and to me, it was the best one so far. It was pretty surreal. I watched it, and there was parts that actually made me feel real bad. And then Twitter, people tweeting, going, "Oh, how surreal, how real this was." I mean, they talk about Eddie a lot too, because Eddie, I guess, had a very big connection to all this. Apparently, his downfall started with Eddie's death, and I mean, they talk about just the emotional impact of losing Eddie to him mentally. And then clearly we find out later about CTE and how many this testosterone in his body was through the roof, like the steroids he was using. And
right.
And you find they touch upon,
which, by the way, like, okay, everyone knows that's been a thing in wrestling, but it came out that was a thing in baseball. And it really hasn't been exposed in football, but I think everyone knows it's in football too.
Oh, yes.
So I mean, you look at wrestling was infamous for that, but really it was a lot of sports.
Yeah, and I mean, they interviewed Chavo, of course, is a big part of it. Vicky is. Chris Jericho is a huge part, and then Chris's son David,
who's a wrestler now.
Right. Who goes by Chris Benoit Jr. for crying out loud. Listening to him talk, it's pretty emotional. Nancy Benoit's sister is a big part, and they talk about her as a woman in WCW, even being married to Kevin Sullivan. And I mean, they really, really go deep into this story. And there was stuff that they told that I never even knew that was just very intriguing to hear. And I watch it ASAP. Anyone who's watching this show here, if you haven't seen it, please as soon as you can watch it. It was very compelling television.
Where would they see it?
Vice. It was on, which I had to actually Google what channel Vice was on my
I will have to do that as well.
Cable lineup. But I know if you have Comcast, which I do, if you missed it, it is on demand.
Right.
If you DVR it or you missed it, it is on demand, and they usually will replay an episode. It's on Tuesday nights. The next episode is this Tuesday, and it's New Jack of ECW fame.
Man, I do not hate anyone in wrestling more than him.
And if anybody knows his story, it's pretty insane. So I expect this episode.
Several people.
Yes, I expect this episode,
including trying to do some in the ring. And it's not really that much of an exaggeration.
No, not at all. And I'm actually looking forward to this because I bet you it's going to be a pretty insane episode. And I think they're doing Owen Hart later this season too. So, let me
ask you: you agree with WWE never mentioning Benoit and trying to erase him? Basically,
they talk about it. I'm glad you brought that. At the very end, they talk about it. I agree with not mentioning Chris Benoit.
It's really tough because, like, I don't want to be that person that erases history, and WWE erases history for much lesser things. Okay, if someone left on bad terms, they try to erase basically the history. But this is where one case where I think you probably have to, in a sense.
But what I would like to see done, and this gets touched upon, is Nancy Benoit doesn't deserve to be erased. She was innocent victim in all this. They could put her in the Hall of Fame as woman. They don't have to say Nancy Benoit if they don't want. Or, you know what? Everybody knows the story. Honor her. She was a victim. And dishonor her career, her merit is Hall of Fame worthy. More Hall of Fame worthy than a lot of the other.
I was going to say, I don't think it is, but with who's already in the Hall of Fame, then yeah, it probably is. Because there's some just awful.
She did a lot in WCW. She wasn't a wrestler, but she was a manager, and one of the best female managers of all time. If Sherry is in there, then woman should be in there. And a lot of the wrestlers that were interviewed, and Jim Ross, they agree. Why not honor her? I think enough time has passed. 13 years. I think you could put her in the Hall of Fame. Honor her. She was a victim. And I mean, it might bring up some old wounds, but I think enough time has passed. And I think the reason
they eventually, put in Macho Man, and I'm sure they will with China and so on. Right. So yeah, maybe.
I do think Bulldogs was supposed to get in this year. The next guy that deserves to be in for obvious reasons, but isn't, for is Owen Hart, and that's because of the legal issues there and everything. And I mean, one day we'll probably see it, but it's probably going to be a while.
Well, Justin, it won't be a while, hopefully, until you and I get to do this again. It'll be interesting because, in a sense, next week will be leading into WrestleMania, if they do go forward with it, which I think they will. So we'll see. We'll have a lot to talk about, maybe not in the most traditional sense, but certainly it's worth tuning in to upcoming weeks to see how everything plays out. That's going to do it for this episode. 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see. This is supposed to be just one more episode upcoming before we call it quits, but I got plenty of free time. So does most of the world. So we're going to keep doing it until things change. Justin, thank you so much for doing this. Stay safe, my friend.
You too.
That's Justin Lowery. I'm Sean Meyers. We'll catch you again next week here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.